Hello class. Today we're going to talk about this data crunch, which is this chart that has the median American household spending. So notice it is a circle graph and it is divided into both percentages and amount of money spent on each action. So when we're looking at this chart, look at the different categories: apparel or clothing, entertainment, healthcare or doctor, food, groceries, transportation, taxes, and housing. So obviously it's not all encompassing of everything. There are some miscellaneous expenses, but it kind of breaks it down into some major categories. So the first thing we want to discuss is wants versus needs. So a lot of times we talk about things that we want or things that we need. And how do we classify or categorize these things? Housing, most definitely housing is a need. We all need shelter. We all need a place to live. Food would also be a need. We need food. We need substances. We need to eat. Our children need to eat. So those things are definitely needs. Then we talk about some things like wants. And sometimes those can be different depending on what we're talking about, who we're talking about, the situation that we're talking about. For example, apparel or clothing. We all need clothing. Clothing is definitely a need. But when you get into clothing to go out, or fancy clothing, or extra shoes, or name brand clothing, more expensive jeans or name brand jeans, designer clothing, high heels, fancy watches, things like that can get into more of a want. One thing that sometimes comes up is the cell phone usage. People debate whether a cell phone is a want or a need. I believe when cell phones first came out, they were considered more of a want. We had home phones, we had way of communicating, things like that. But as we get into today's society, cell phones have kind of gone from a want more into a need. You have to be able to communicate with your job. You have to communicate with your children's school. If you're out for interviews, when people give you a call, they want that immediate feedback. We've kind of progressed from a cell phone has gone more from a need to a want. So sometimes things can be in more than one category, depending on how we're using them, or depending on our own family situation. So now that we've seen how this chart is laid out, there's going to be some questions asked about it as far as how much percentage of this particular household spending is a want or a need. So you're going to have to classify whether things are wants or whether they are needs based on how you would spend your money on them. So just be looking at this chart, be looking at the questions, and we're going to review this chart and kind of talk about budgeting. How do you budget unless you determine what you actually have to have versus where you can shave some money off of it. For example, if you're renting and your rent is fixed, you can't next month just save money on your rent. You can't just say, hey, landlord, I'm going to pay you less money and save money. That's just not a thing. Whereas if you're paying gas for your car, you might be able to say, hey, I'm not going to use the car nearly as much and save some money there. Or if you use busing for transportation, you might be able to say, I'm not going to use that quite as much. Maybe I can walk where I'm going. Or maybe if you have a bus pass or a fixed car payment, you can't change the amount that you spend on that. That's already bought for the month, whether you use it a little bit or a lot, it's the same amount of money. So certain bills are variable and certain bills are fixed. So we're also looking at those. So I'm going to go ahead and let you work on the assignment, read this chart, answer the questions, and then we'll follow up afterwards. Thanks, guys.